right, Scott, it's all about the Spice Wars.
Ready for patrol. What do you need?
Scott, you and I are checking out an RTS over on the land of PC. It is Dune, Spice Wars. You and I are big fans of this genre. Dune, on the other hand, though, is something that's a little bit new to both of us. I've never seen the movies. I don't know if you have either. So jumping in, we're kind of at a loss for like a bit of a backstory, right? We're checking out an early access version of the game. What are your overall impressions so far?
Well, my first thought was, okay, I know a little bit about Dune. I know there's a lot of sci-fi, but people are sword fighting. It's a very interesting looking movie, and I've never read the book, but I know it's a big deal. So I thought, okay, Dune, there's probably a lot behind this RTS, and you get into it, and well, there's a lot going on, that's for sure. It's not very obvious how everything works. So I was expecting a little bit more of a tutorial, maybe something that kind of broke down each section of the HUD, because that user display is just, wow, it's foreign to me. And I've played a lot of Total War in the past. That's what I'm familiar with.
No, absolutely. We've been in this genre for a long time, but trying to get caught up in something that we're not that familiar with for a brand new player for like ourselves is a little daunting to kind of figure out what is happening, right? Like you say, the tutorial is kind of lacking, honestly. It says, okay, now here's your objective, but it doesn't explain to you how to go about achieving that objective, right? In order to get your harvester and go out, gather spices so that you can pay your taxes and then get into the council meetings and why you're there and how does that affect the outcome and how do you even, you know, kind of make a point of selecting the right opportunities so you have a better outcome. And then you get into the skill tree, and then dude, you can get into espionage stuff, which is one of my favorite parts of the game, because you get your council and you can kind of pivot them around the other factions. There are a total of 4 factions right now. Will we see more in the future? Yet to be told. We'll see if that happens there. Overall though, man, I've had a good time but a confusing time. You know, I started the game 3 times over before things started to kind of click a little bit, right? And so it's taking me a little bit to kind of get into the swing of things. And as I started to understand more, I really started to enjoy myself. The last time round though, Scott, I lost all my troops to a sandworm. It was kind of devastating. I saw it was coming. I moved my harvester, and then it all got gobbled up. I was like, oh my goodness. Yeah. So, you know, it does have the sandworms. It does have that Dune feel. If you're a fan of those movies in the book, I think you're going to have a good time playing this. So for me, it's been an interesting turn of events to get into this one as somebody who's not so familiar. So hopefully moving out of early access, we can look into more of a backstory, a better tutorial, and things along that line.
I need water, but it didn't explain to me how to get water out of sand, so it's something you kind of have to tinker around on your own and find out how these different menus work. And it's a little bit too much for me because I'm used to Total War. That's something I learned over a decade ago. Maybe that's why it makes a little bit more sense. But even when it comes to the council, your influence politically versus other factions, that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know how to achieve anything in this one. Grabbing resources again makes sense, but don't know how to do it. The espionage kind of accent is really cool, but
I like it.
Again, I'm familiar with Total War, where you have agents that you walk around, a spy, an assassin, an emissary. There's very clearly defined roles. And even if you take these names out of there and you replace them with science fiction from the 80s, that makes sense to me, but it just doesn't seem very easy to learn. Maybe it's because I have experience with Total War. I'm expecting things to kind of play out in a certain way, but it just it really missed me. I'm not sure how to play this game, although I'm very curious.
Absolutely. I found my resources drying up, and then once that dried up, I didn't feel like I was able to achieve anything, and it came to like a standstill. I'm like, now what do I do? Because nothing's happening, right? Then I got bombarded by getting attacked by other factions, which is something you got to wager into, right? Make sure you have your military troops, and you can kind of, you know, fortify your villages that you take over as you kind of progress. But then, keep an eye on your water, right? You got to put down a windmill. Okay, how did you achieve that? Eventually I stumbled across how to get to that point, but then you get into your skill tree and you're looking at things and think, okay, if I go into this area, I can work on my intelligence and work on that espionage stuff within the council, and then pivot my agents within that. You know, there's a lot of depth, I think, to the game. But to get early on and to get a better grasp of how to achieve this is something that's really lacking. I think we had a good time, but a confusing one. Are you going to recommend or not recommend this preview early access build of Dune Spice Wars?
It gets a little complicated here because I think if you're a fan of Dune, if you're up to date on the movies, you've read the book, I think this is going to hit a lot better for you. But for me as an outsider, it was really kind of a stumble. And you get into different aspects of the game. I see that there's a lot going on, but I'm not sure if it's really of quality because I'm just not understanding it at all. I really wish the combat had a lot more tactics, a little bit of strategy to it, but it seems like you just summon different units and that's all you can really do. For fans of Dune, I think you're going to like this, but if you're not a fan, I think you should probably start off with the book. I can't recommend this as a first-timer.
No, I agree with you. I think there's a lot of concepts and things that are ready to go, but we're just still at the early stages of things with early access. I don't think it's quite fleshed out yet. I think it's something to keep an eye on, but for me, I'm not recommending this one yet either.
Spice Wars is really only for the fans of the Dune series. In its current form, we cannot recommend to non-fans.